Next one.
Yeah, you talked about education. What do you think is the federal role in dealing with those issues?
I think the federal has a lot of roles. One of the big roles that's applicable to Arizona is the voucher program. They want to make the Arizona voucher program a national program. They want to make it the blueprint. This is an issue. It's two issues. One, it's taking public money from and put it into private, but it's also public money supporting religious institutions because most private schools are religious, and that's a separation of church and state issue. But if we're not careful, because I mean it's been said that they want to take the voucher program from Arizona and implement it nationally, that's a federal problem. That means everybody wants to do that. I am a firm believer that local communities and states should be very invested in what their educational system looks like. But I also believe that the federal government has an oversight responsibility, a moral responsibility, in fact. Because if you think of it like this, if we allowed for every community to decide 100% education on their own, there would be zero uniformity. That would be a problem, one, in what's the base education? What is the basic that we as a country believe is basic? What is basic science that we believe in? But it's also a problem in higher education, because if everybody's on the different page, then how do universities decide who's eligible to enter? I mean, then you have to go back to having a test for them to get in, and only based on the test, and then it's only if you test well, which is kind of the problem with the educational system now, is we're teaching to a test instead of teaching to humans. Federal also has a big responsibility because federal money does come into the educational system, and that federal money coming into the education system is part of the oversight for civil rights. If federal government gets out of all education, doesn't have any money, then that also takes away the right of the federal government to have oversight on civil rights violations, which is a problem with private schools because they don't have that oversight because they don't get federal money. Now if they get the voucher money, it doesn't come with oversight. So I'm just confused on why we're paying somebody with not getting anything back. There's has to be something in a payback, and that doesn't have that. But I don't believe that the federal government should be mandating everything, because you do have to have some flexibility on the local level. Every state is a little bit different. We may want to focus on some different things. So for example, New York City probably doesn't want to focus on what was it called? The National Farmers Association. We used to have these clubs. In the school, like the 4-H, but in school, when I was in school, we had Future Farmers of America, that's it. So maybe New York City isn't going to focus on Future Farmers of America associations, but maybe rural Arizona and definitely Arkansas, that's a big deal. So you gotta have that flexibility on the local level, but you also have to have federal oversight in order to have some form of uniformity and protections.
Thank you for being here today. What is the biggest challenge facing you and your candidacy, and how can your advocates best successfully meet that challenge?
I think that the number one obstacle for any candidate is radar. Getting on people's radar. Until you get on radar, then people don't know what you stand for because they don't even know you're standing. The number one place that I feel that people can help me is, obviously there's always fundraising and volunteering and all the normal things that go with the campaign, but I will tell you what means gold: sharing the social media. It's like $100 donation every time you hit the word share, because that's how social media works. That's how you get on radar. And there is absolutely nothing that anyone can do for me other than maybe money, which there's a limit to that. There's no limit to how many times you can give that $100 share donation. You can do it thousands of times. But those things getting on the radar, they're huge. I mean, obviously human bodies, doing the door knocking and the calling and talking to your friends and coming to events or hosting events, all this is so important. But we're in a new world now, And social media is how I get to these people who might come out and walk with me, or phone for me, or invite me, or come to my events. So that's the number one thing I tell people, share the social media. And I'm on all of them, at least the top 4. If there's more than that, I'm doing good. I got 4. I got 4 personal and 4 campaign. So I guess I have 8. It's not just about getting people to donate, which, by the way, I'm a firm believer against pay to play. It really, really upsets me that the only way you can talk to a person who you are able to elect is if you're willing to make a donation. I gotta tell you, upsetting. Come have coffee with me. It's a $50 donation. You know, okay, I'll buy coffee, but maybe I don't want to donate, but I do want to talk to you. Right? So I'm against that. I don't donate. I don't have pay to play. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 things. First of all, you don't really have a track record, and that's one of my issues with Flake, is that his talk is very nice, very flowery, very descriptive, and sounds really good, but his voting record is really bad. So, you know, we can look at his voting record and attack that, and that's wonderful. However, you have no voting record, and your talk is wonderful, but you have no voting record. So how do we know, how do we know that you're just not, you know, another politician who's like all of a sudden jumped on the scene? You have no track record. We don't know really who you are from, you know, some little bit of practice that you've done in law. But other than that, you know, how are we gonna look you up and know?
Well, I've been pretty public. My life has been pretty public since I've been in Arizona, since at least 2001. So I have different things about that I've aligned myself with. So I've been a very public part of Interfaith. That's well documented online. I have been an avid blogger. So my personal thoughts are out there. Believe me, the strategist came out and said, we need to take your blog down. And I'm like, no, my blog is the real me. That's something that I shouldn't take down, because that's what I really think. And that's how someone can reference and say, well, she's saying X today, but what did she think before? Well, I blogged on it before, so you can look it up. I won the Martin Luther King Award twice, once for the city of Phoenix and once for the city of Tempe for my work in civil rights and social justice. I'll agree with you that if track record is what you're looking for as far as politics, I don't have it. And in a way, I'm proud of that. Because I didn't, start at the bottom and make this a career move. I made this a we can do better move. I know that we can do better. If you look at everything that I've ever worked on, it's all out in the public, what my belief system is, which is different. If someone can say that I may believe in something, but just about everything that you could ask me, I've either blogged on it, or I've been interviewed about it, or I've talked about it on my website, or I've talked about it on one of my 3 Facebooks, including the campaign Facebook. I think that instead of I think that we're taking, I agree with your point that, I think that we're taken too often with people who talk well, and we don't really know what they believe. We only know what they say, and we take people at their word. And I think it's important for us to look deeper. So I do agree with you on that, but I'm just saying that there's a lot that you can look on with me that's deeper. And I'll answer any question, but like I said, it's my life since 2001 has been very public. So everything that I've ever said is pretty much out there.
Have you ever run for any city councils or board
Nope.
of supervisors or anything like that?
Nope. And legally it's not a requirement.
So you want to start at the top?
Right.
Without having any kind of before?
At the risk of making everybody really angry, that happened in 2016. Not the best example. Not the best example. Doesn't really help my cause that much. But legally, there is no requirement to move up. And technically, I will tell you that that I think that one of the problems that we see is that people get so entrenched when they move up these different seats, that they get so entrenched in how things are done, and being connected to donors and having so many favors and being a part of this club that the rest of us aren't part of, and this is kind of a problem. You know, this is a problem with us not being able to get them out of that track. The corporate money, for example. I signed the candidates with a contract, and the candidates with the contract says that I will not take corporate money, ever, and I will work to overturn Citizens United, and I will work to overturn the gerrymandering. So these are important issues about getting back to citizens. Now, most of the time people, when they're entrenched with moving up the ranks, they could never have these conversations. By the way, 97% of all people believe that we should not have corporations interacting with our elected leaders. 97, regardless of party, 97% of people in the United States believe that we should have a separation between the corporate money and the politics. 93% of the people think that it's too difficult to change. Okay, that's a problem. So when people ask me, well, why don't you just take the corporate money now, and then when you win, you can stop taking the corporate money and you can work on getting rid of the corporate money. And look, well, that's asking me to take cocaine and promise you that I'm not going to be addicted to it. And that's what we have now. That's truly what we have now. And we have 3 candidates in Arizona who have signed the candidates with the contract. And that would be Brianna Westbrook, who's in near Maricopa County. She's also running for Congress. And Billy Kovacs, who's running for Congress, more closer to here. And so we are the only 3 in Arizona so far that has signed this contract. And the more that we have candidates willing to come out, which by the way, all 3 of us didn't move up the ranks. So I think that should tell you who's more interested in not taking corporate money. But more of us candidates who insist on taking this stance will give more people, voters, the will to force, to demand that the other candidates also take this stance. Because you should know that the reason why one of the reasons why the vote was late in Atlanta between Keith Ellison and Tom Perez, it was 2 hours late before they were able to vote on it. It was late because someone proposed that the DNC pass an amendment that the DNC and the Democratic candidates would stop taking corporate money. And they argued about that for 2 hours before voting it down. So a lot of people want this, but it's going to take pressure to do it. It's going to take pressure from the inside. It's going to take candidates willing to take these stances. So this is a stance that I took. And if you look at that, I mean, if you look at Flake, he didn't start at city council either. He actually started in the House, and before that, he was doing more missionary work. So, you know, he went straight from 0 to the House, and then the House to Senate.
I had the privilege of conversing with you prior to this, and I enjoyed your story about your mother, because I think it says something about you and what you were taught. Would you mind sharing that?
So I grew up in Arkansas. My mom and dad were high school sweethearts. My mom got pregnant in high school, which was a problem at the time, and they got married, and then he was physically abusive to her, and they had 4 girls. I was the baby, and she finally decided to leave him. And by the way, I wasn't Muslim, so just so you know, my dad was Southern Baptist. He had nothing to do with me. So just put that out there so you don't assume, that other stereotype. So my mom decided to divorce him, and then she took him to court for child support for 4 baby girls. And the court gave her an injunction and said, she gets this child support, but it has to be served. And the police department in the 70s would not serve the child support enforcement because the going idea at the time across the country, not just Arkansas, was if you'd be a better wife, your husband wouldn't beat you, and then you wouldn't be divorced, so then you wouldn't need child support. So she decided to go and join law enforcement. She went to the police academy in order to become a police officer, so that she could serve my dad. She was one of the first female police officers in Arkansas, in order to serve my dad. She did serve him. She never got paid, but then she went on to start the Office of Child Support Enforcement for Arkansas, which didn't exist, so that other women could get paid, and men, because child support goes both ways. You know, I just don't understand the word no.
What are your thoughts on single-payer healthcare?
Healthcare for all is, I think, where we need to go. I have studied the Australian system, and I've studied the Canadian system, and I've studied the German system, and everyone is different. And when we kind of talk about Medicare or Medicaid for all and the single payer, and these are terms that we can latch onto, but regardless of how we define them, there has to be a system where everybody contributes a little bit to a certain level, and then everybody, even the people who can't because of financial, they can't contribute, are covered. But there's two different ways of doing that. One is to have everybody covered to a certain minimum, which is way above what our minimum is, and then having actually it's a lot like the Medicare program that we have, where you have the basic care, and then you have the Part Bs that you can buy, the extras. So the first system is like that, where you'd have the minimum and then you could buy extra. The other one is to not have the minimum, where everybody is covered for everything. And then there's a lot in between that. So I can't say that I'm for Medicare for all, or I'm for single payer. I'm for those concepts. I am for making sure that everybody has health care for all. And if those are the best options that we have for us, I would support those 100%. But I'm very open to, we might even be able to be even more creative and find something even better that works for us. Let me go up here first.
Taxes. Are we going to revise the tax code, and how would you approach that? And a military budget, what would you do with that?
So about the tax code and the military budget. So my ideas on the tax code. So what I actually do think that it makes a lot more sense to have a single tax code where, you know, there's one percentage and everybody pays it. It would be way less complicated. You wouldn't need loopholes. It would more function upon how much you make as opposed to how much can you fiddle around. I've did taxes for many years. There's a lot of fiddling around you can do. Is that legally? We definitely have to change the tax code. I mean, if you look at the tax code now, we're not the most taxed in the world, but we are definitely not getting what we pay for. I mean, we pay a lot of money not to have the things that we want. And I don't mean that as benefits. I mean, look at Congress, they keep giving themselves raises. Well, I mean, if I could give myself raises, I would give myself raises too. There has to be some kind of an oversight for that. And our taxes go for that. But then there's so many ways, after you make a certain amount of money, there's so many more tax breaks that you can have, where you actually end up paying 0% tax. And the less money you make, the less things you can count off. It's just craziness. You know, I mean, I had things I counted off, and then I went below that on the next year. I had less money that year, and I couldn't count off the same things I counted off the year before because I hit a below number. You know, and I was like, really? I counted off last year? And they were like, yeah, it's because you made more money. I mean, we definitely need to work on the tax code, but giving the rich and corporations more tax breaks is not the way to do it. and I wanna talk about that a little bit more in detail. You really need to understand, most people probably here do anyway, but corporations, they use the infrastructure that we paid, that we invested for. We created the roads, we created the highways, we created the bridges, we created the internet system, we created the telephone system, we created the entire medical, whether it's medicine or most innovations. Most things are innovated in those industries because public funds go into these experimenting universities or grants that go to companies that are trying to do these things for the public good, because we're paying for it. And then once it's created, then it gets sold, to other companies, or companies are allowed to make a profit off of it. So like with pharmaceuticals, the reason why prices are so high before you go to generic is because of their R&D, because of the money that they spent to develop it. They're allowed to recoup back. So for a certain period of time, they're allowed to charge huge amounts of money and have no competition. That's the payback. So that's kind of like a tax break. So they're using all of our infrastructure to run their businesses, and most of the corporations are not paying their taxes. Whereas small businesses, who actually are the job creators, who actually pump the most money into our communities, they don't have tax breaks. Not anywhere near what the corporations are. It doesn't make any sense. And then, like I said, the more money you make, the more that you can count off. So we have a lot of people, it's funny, they talk about our benefits. I just read that they wanted to make Social Security, they want to change the name to the federal benefits or something, right? It's like we're benefiting, and it's like, you know what, y'all got this backwards, because y'all are benefiting a lot. We're just, we just gave you an interest-free loan. That's what just happened.
In your travels around, have you spoken with any of the industrial leaders in the state of Arizona to get their opinion on what they're looking for in the way of education, in the way of infrastructure, things that are important to them to continue in business and continue to grow, and how can you help with what they're looking for?
I haven't spoken directly to the industries, but I'm a big researcher and studier, so I often get the reports, or not just like the media headline stuff, but like actual reports that different organizations create about industries. And most of the things that I'm reading are about quality of life. So, which is one of the reasons I've been talking to the rural areas about, if we made rural areas more quality of life, not really changing their lifestyle, actually enhancing their lifestyle. So they're looking for quality of life. They're looking for skilled people, both in labor and in like IT or higher things where you need, higher degrees. They're looking for places where their employees would want to live. The quality of life of having, not always the cities, by the way. We overrate that. Not everybody wants to live in the city. A lot of people want to live in more rural, quaint, but well quality of life stuff. But the biggest things that, from the reports that they look for, which is why I pointed out the tax breaks, most of the industries now are saying, yeah, everybody gets us tax breaks. We don't even look at that anymore. We look for quality of life and education.
So if we fast forward to January 2019 and you've taken office, what's your first bill? What's your first act?
Well, by contract, my first act has to be to talk about putting something forward or working on a bill for overturning Citizens United. That's the contract that I signed. It says that has to be one of my very first acts. And it says, and the second, one of my very first acts has to be about gerrymandering.
Yeah.
One more question?
Just one question. Would you explain the pen you're wearing for everyone, please?
Let's see which one I'm wearing today. So it's the Democratic Party for a Better America.
Okay. And what does that mean?
Well, I bought the pen. ran because I liked it and because I liked the idea that the Democratic Party is supposed to be for making America always better, and that I wanted to be a part of that.
Yay.